So we left off last time having concluded the general idea of what profit is and hopefully helping to convince you of the importance of profit in this system of social coordination that up until recently we typically took for granted. Right? The reality is that it is difficult to organize the world. It's difficult to see better ways of doing things, and it's really hard to see the better ways of doing things unless you have rewards for residual claimants who do that decision making or that entrepreneurial vision investment. Now, it turns out that market economies work because of predictable rules, the enforcement of contracts that allow people who want to use resources in a better way to gain control over them and then to make themselves the residual claimants in the process. So if you think you can do a better job, if we have a system of clear and stable rules, you can put your money on the line. You can gamble. You can say, look, I'm going to buy out this company. I'm going to take it over because I think I have a better way of organizing things. Basically to gamble on getting it right. Now we have market societies have evolved an enormous set of institutions for keeping transaction costs low. Now, institutions by institutions, I think I've mentioned this, by institutions we mean rules. So we've evolved an enormous set of institutions to keep transaction costs low so that resources can be moved relatively easily to places where they're valued more, and so that people who want to do that can act on their perceptions. So one of the things as we deal with the current crisis, many people say is, oh, businesses are going to go bankrupt. Now, as a result of the crisis, if this is widespread enough, this could create a systemic problem. But generally, without this major crisis, when I see businesses going under, closing shop, I say, oh, that's really sad. But I'm actually really pleased because that indicates that we have a system that can reallocate resources from lower to higher valued uses. It means that people have received both the information and the incentives to act on that information, that there are other things that will generate more value. Now, the scary thing when businesses go under is you end up saying, well, but what is that other thing? And again, my answer is, I don't know. I really don't know. Nobody really knows. There's going to be some other people who hopefully will come along and take a gamble that they can actually do something that other people haven't seen. So we could, right? There's things that we can do that will throw a spanner in the works of this. So we can restrict competition. So here, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to finish up profit, right? We're going to keep talking about profit, and then we're also going to start talking about government and markets. So as we've already talked about, if you tax profit, what you do is you reduce the benefit of entrepreneurial activity. So as ever, when you reduce the benefit and hold the cost constant, you're going to get less of the behavior. So there's less incentive to innovate or to imitate. And again, as we've already talked about, and this again, I think now with the current crisis and the stimulus bill, it makes me a little nervous, I will admit this, because it is clearly going to be subsidizing losses. As a general rule, I don't like doing this because, again, what does this do? If we subsidize losses, so this would be to decrease the benefit of good behavior, in effect, from a societal point of view, and this here decreases the cost of bad behavior from a societal point of view. And so this makes me nervous. Now, again, there may be, as ever, this class isn't about definitive right and wrong answers. Rather, this is about better and worse answers. And so, as a baseline, I get very nervous when we start taxing profit and subsidizing losses. This makes me nervous. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't some good reasons at some moments in time to do so. But again, my sense would be that the people who want to do these things, the onus or the responsibility should be on them to explain why this time is different. Because again, one of the things when we look at it this way, through the economic lens, profit is a communication mechanism. It is a signal for entry and one way to secure your profits is to get protection against entry. So we should understand that pretty much all businesses out there are going to want to keep other people from copying them, from imitating them, from entering their market. We should also understand that probably, unless there's something else that's not on our board here, we wouldn't want them to be able to do that because that's going to destroy value. So let's think back to your student guide. So we had all of those costs, and what we had was, I think at the end of the day, you were making positive economic profit of $125. Now, if you could get the chancellor to give you the exclusive franchise for course and teacher guides, what would happen? Would that be a good thing for you? Well, sure, because then you would get to keep your positive economic profit. In effect, how much would you be willing to pay? Now, I don't think he'd necessarily take a bribe, but how much would you be willing to pay for your monopoly? The answer is you would be willing to pay up to $125. If you were forced to pay that, you would be making zero economic profit, and you wouldn't be leaving the market because that, again, zero economic profit would be saying that you are doing at least as well as you could be anywhere else in society. So you'd be willing to pay him $125, but let's take the situation of, right, maybe you don't have to pay him. Because again, the issue is if other people enter, what's going to happen? We know the price is going to fall, which means your total revenue is going to fall, and we would expect your profit to go to zero in a competitive market. So would it be good for you if the chancellor kept other people from entering? Of course, because then you'd get to keep your positive economic profit. Now, would this be good for MSUB? Would it be good to bar these entrants? Well, hopefully by now we could, right, pretty clearly draw this up. Hopefully something by now we're familiar with. Now we're going to get more specific here in a short period of time about supply schedules, right? But let's assume this was your supply schedule, at which point we had said this was $3 and this was $500. And so somebody else comes in and enters. What's probably going to happen? Well, be an increase in the number of suppliers. And so, because they didn't see this before, they didn't have this information, they weren't suppliers who were not supplying, they were suppliers who didn't even know this market existed. And so now that they know, they're going to imitate you, and that's going to increase the supply schedule. Again, we're going to talk more specifically about this here in a moment. And maybe then, right, what do we know is going to happen? We know the price is going to fall. We may not know exactly to where it's going to fall. We could if we estimated the demand schedule here. We could if we had a supply equation. But for our purposes here, the key is that the price would fall, and the price should fall until you're making zero economic profit. Now, we're going to have a bit of an issue with our picture here because you're still going to make some positive economic profit. So hold that question. The key here is what has happened to producer surplus as a result of entrance. Your producer surplus went from all of this area here down to just this area here because price fell to here. And while this is the aggregate supply schedule, this is your individual supply schedule. And so your producer surplus has gone down. Now, if enough people enter, your producer surplus will probably go down to zero. That's bad for you, but is that bad for society? Well, let's just take a look at this situation. Drop in our alphabet soup. And go ahead and take a moment and figure this out. See what the change in consumer surplus, change in producer surplus, change in government, and change in total surplus is as a result of this. I'm going to make a little bit of room here. I'm going to stop this here. You can take a moment. I encourage you to go ahead and work through this. See what the impact on overall well-being is as a result of entry. And we'll come back in the next video here.